It's been said that the two most important days of a person's life are the day they're born and the day they figure out why. Hi, I'm Jimmy Lakey, the host of the Critical Mission podcast. I figured out what my why was. I thought early on I might be a politician. Maybe I'd be a pastor. Maybe I'd be a preacher. I started a music company. I host a radio show. But my why, it was all discovered on the streets of Africa, in Rwanda, when I met a little child that I adopted and decided I'm going to take care of widows and orphans in Africa. My organization, my why is riverspromise.org. What's your why? What about my guest? What's their why? We tell the story of people's why right here on the Critical Mission podcast. All right, got a great guest who's throwing things over here in the studio, Mr. Ben Cort. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Jimmy. How you doing, man?
We're gonna give you a formal introduction in a second, but first of all, sometimes people watch this and they go, "Is he smoking a cigar?"
Yes.
Yes, we're smoking cigars.
Yes, we are.
It is, and that's a beautiful thing to smoke a cigar. My favorite, just several weeks ago, Father's Day, my favorite Father's Day meme is, if your father doesn't smoke cigars, happy Mother's Day to him. I like that. We can smoke. It's my studio. We can do what we want in here.
So I appreciate the hospitality.
You brought we're going to get to a real topic here in a second. You brought an amazing cigar. What are we smoking? It's custom rolled because that's how you roll. You're a custom guy.
Well, it's a custom roll that was made for a mutual friend, Pete Essler, who every year, such a great guy, invites a bunch of people down to his house in Costa Rica and kind of parties. And I last year had these made up for that party because there was like a kind of who's got the coolest cigar contest. Mm-hmm. So I figured instead of trying to find something old or whatever, I would call my friend who runs a company called Cuban Seed Company in LA and have him make something for Pete. And I had a couple left.
That's so good.
It's so good, isn't it?
Just film us smoking cigars. Oh, this is wonderful.
Best
wonderful
podcast ever.
Cuban Seed in Cuban Seed Cigars.
Yep. And
shout out to them.
In West Hollywood.
It's like they're a sponsor, but they're not. Cuban Seed.
We should call them.
We could sell some cigars. Cuban Seed Cigars. Made to you by that guy. That was a bad commercial. So
That's
we
terrible.
should do that. All right, Ben, let's get down to business.
Sir.
Premise of the podcast for those that are new is two most important days of a person's life: the day they're born, the day they figure out why. And I think you've kind of figured out why. You've got a couple of successful businesses, but one that you spend the most time on is behavioral health. Let's start by just defining what that is, and then we're going to go back up and go to Little Ben and walk our way to how you got there. So what is behavioral health? What area of behavioral health and addiction are you in?
Oh, you can't say addiction in the same way you can't say mental illness anymore. So we're super woke here, Jimmy.
Okay.
So instead of saying mental health, we
Yes.
say behavioral health.
Behavioral health.
And instead of saying addiction, we say substance use disorder. So that's all I work in is addiction and mental health.
I can tell you love the wokeness of the whole industry there.
Yes, super into it. Yeah, my world is around addiction and particularly...
You can't say addiction.
I know. Particularly what we call co-occurring disorders, when somebody has a serious mental health disorder as well as a substance use disorder or addiction.
How does that manifest? Do you have counseling centers, residential centers? Do you have therapists that sit in rooms or you go lay on the couch? What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, personally, not very much because
you're smoking a cigar with me.
Because what I'm actually good at is hiring really smart people.
Okay.
That's what I've learned. On a day-to-day basis, what we do is work in both inpatient and outpatient settings with people whose addictions have taken their lives out of control.
Okay.
There are three real critical components to doing this right. You've got the clinical side, which is what we think of with our therapists and our psychologists, our testing, our group therapy, individual therapy. And we've got to absolutely integrate everything we know in the medical sciences with it too. So we've got physicians and nurses and nurse practitioners and things who are a big part of what we do. And then the administrative side, which is what I do, kind of keep
You're
it
about to
all
open a
going.
big new treatment center.
We are.
And it's Medicaid.
It is.
And so you're going to help some folks that usually probably wouldn't be able to get the help.
If I could, I don't know a good way to tell your listeners what a big deal this is, so I will ramble for 30 seconds an attempt of that. The goal when we started this company was to provide the quality of service that private pay people get to folks who are reliant on insurance. If you can write a check in the 50, 60, 70, 80, $100,000 a month range, there's nothing we can't fix, man.
Yeah.
We know how to fix this stuff. Most people can't do that, so they have to use their insurance. Insurance programs tend to really skimp on what the actual program does, so they don't have as good of results. At the very bottom of the insurance world is something you don't even include when you talk about private insurance, and that's Medicaid, because these are typically some of the most unfortunate in our society, people at the hardest place in their lives, economically, socially. And so for us to be able to continue offering what we consider to be private pay level service to folks who are Medicaid dependent, it's been a lifetime goal.
Wow. That opens soon. I know you guys are just about the building. Okay, let's back up. What did you want to be when you were a little kid? I'm sure all the fancy words you just used, that was not probably on the little Ben's radar.
When I was a kid, what I wanted to be was dead. From the earliest memory I've got, which was about 7, I grew up in a home with an alcoholic parent who fortunately my mom got sober and things changed a lot, and a dad who was a youth pastor, which ended us being on public assistance, food stamps, all this. And I don't have any memories before 7. And when I do, they are kind of fascinations around how I could end my life.
Wow.
And being in the socioeconomic condition that I was in, it's not like we could afford to go see a therapist or get a psychiatrist or whatever. So I started getting high because getting high helped that. Getting drunk helped that. It's like we always say inside of the recovery world, like it works till it doesn't. And it really helped quiet down that mental health. I was in the, left Colorado when I was 12 and was in the greater DC area, which in the mid 90s was a pretty tough place. I didn't know many people who looked like me, and it was pretty violent and scary. And I had just resolved myself to never saying 21. I had one vision when I turned 21. And that vision was to figure out how to equip 40-ounce bottles of beer to one of those beer helmets so I could walk around with it, not the other. The only plan I had for my future, hope or desire, was to stop hurting.
Wow. And that started when you were young. You're heading towards 21. You couldn't afford a therapist. Was this just all Ben by himself in his head, or did your parents, were they aware? I mean...
Oh, yeah, man. They tried. And they really tried. I was a difficult kid. It's been inside of the 12-step world, we call things like this amends. And after we make those formal amends, we do living amends forever. I still continue that with my parents because I was really hard for them. Yeah. I didn't do them any favors.
Wow. So you're heading towards 21, trying to think of how to stop hurting. Maybe being dead is the best way to do that. Obviously, being dead did not happen. Here you are. What started to happen? What transitioned here?
So I ended up in the middle of the 90s. They were just putting everybody into 12-step. They were mandating 12-step. Our juvenile detention centers were full, if you remember how full our jails were back then. So what I got sentenced to 3 separate times was what they call a 90 and 90. We have to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I'd grown up in the back room of 12-step meetings with my mother because, there weren't babysitters. So she'd park my sisters and I in the back of the meeting and we'd play with whatever. So I had so much of this 12-step inside of me. I went to these meetings. I was almost always high when I was at them, but I went to them, and, even if you don't want that information to sink in or you're not interested in it, it's back here somewhere. And in a fun and much longer story that I won't bore you with, one of my closest friends, upon getting out of jail, was committed to sobriety, probably my closest friend in the world at that point. And he and I took a trip on which I pledged to him that I would take 5 days substance-free. And I went to AA meetings with him every night because his probation officer required him. And on the last day of that trip, we're in the Smoky Mountains in North Carolina. And on the last day of that trip, on a hike that we took early in the morning, we call it a burning bush moment in the 12-step world. I watched the sun break over those Smokies, man, and No hyperbole, no bullshit, no nothing. That sun came up and it made me think that maybe I didn't want to be dead. And that started my journey to sobriety.
So the journey to sobriety begins. I've known some friends that have started a journey, stopped a journey, started a journey, stopped a journey. What was your journey like? Were there a lot of stoplights?
No. And I will offer my 2 cents on that. I believe that even when people slip back and they have a setback, and we're always still on that journey, because it's not a linear process. You're not always doing this. It's mountains, man. It looks like our Front Range. You're up and down. My last drink or drug was the night before I took that trip with my friend Mike.
Wow.
It was a bad night. I drank 22 shots of vodka out of a plastic container and walked along the Capitol Beltway with everything I owned to get back to my aunt's house. 3 exits.
Wow.
About 2 a.m. And
that's not a great place to be walking.
No.
A lot of crosswalks there.
Especially in 1996.
Yeah, that's what.
And it ended up being the last time when Mike dropped me off. When we got back, I was instantly encountered with pretty intense opportunity to do everything I love to do. And instead I went out and I paged Mike, because that's what you did.
You paged. For the youngsters watching the program, it's the step after a rotary phone.
It's right, a rotary phone.
The pager.
And I said, hey, man, can we meet and go to a meeting? And
so as soon as you got back, you're back from the Smoky Mountains. Your body's probably going, hey, we're missing something here.
Yeah, I was furious, yes. Mm-hmm.
Your body's furious. Mind is furious. Opportunity, right? So it says, hello, let's go. And you're like, no, you're going to page Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you find the strength to do that? I mean, was it that sunset? Was it just a commitment to your friend? Where'd that strength come from?
I have absolutely no idea, Jimmy. Like, I think if I'm going to be as honest as I can about it, I don't think it was that I wanted something. I think that I was afraid of something. I think there was something I didn't want.
Yeah.
And that was dead.
Yeah.
It was a new feeling. I mean, I know for your listeners and for your, like, we don't think like that. We fight to survive. We breathe. Like, I just didn't care.
In your head, up until that moment, when you said you wanted to be dead, if you went on a bender, went on a thing, and just didn't wake up, that would have been, that was probably how you thought you'd go.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Or violently. I lost a lot of friends to some pretty intense violence back then. And
but it wasn't like you were probably not going to be the guy jumping off a building. Let's go out numb.
I always knew I wouldn't end up doing it myself, at least back then, because there were too many other interesting ways to have it done, too many other kind of ways that would result in a good story. Hey, man, listen, I came to find out later, like years and years later, but I've got a major depressive disorder. I've got a serious chemical imbalance inside of my brain. So yeah, there was life stuff and everything that was challenging, but as a psychologist friend of mine likes to say, we all are born and have to dig holes. You were born without a shovel. Like, I had a chemical imbalance that was screaming at me, and that needed to be fixed.
Yeah, there's people, pause right in that area. There's people out there, and I'm sure this is what you guys do now, is help people find these answers. There's people like, this is just how I was born. There's nothing I can do about it. It's genetic. And they go there, and it's probably somebody listening or watching is going, I never thought of that. Maybe it's not just that I inherited mama's genes or dad's genes. Maybe there's something else going on, and that's probably the care that not everybody can get.
We know so much more about what drives addiction and mental health, and the chemicals in your brain, your life experiences, the trauma you've experienced, the way you grew up, like, they all contribute to this thing. And one of the tough things for me, I think, in my life is this reality, because I spent a lot of time in those kind of scientific researchy sort of circles. I've written some things on that, and we know how to fix these things. People do not have access to the resources to fix these things. So that's where folks end up suffering alone. I'm the only one. There's no hope. Have another drink, have another drug.
Yeah. And I wasn't planning to ask this question, but as you're talking, I'm thinking, and even some government assistance and programs that are supposed to help people, I think sometimes they may be a lot more beholden to chemical fixes, big companies that make a lot of money off people continuing to be sick.
You better believe we are. We've got the government's current solution right now is there's a couple of different medications, but it's give somebody a pill and forget about it. You cannot, medicine plays a very important role in treating addiction, but you cannot, nobody's getting high because they like the taste. Nobody's drinking too much because they just found a drink they particularly like. We do it to shut something up inside of us and to create a buffer between our emotions and a cruel world.
Wow. So let's go back, fast forward a little bit back to, you go to AA meeting that night with Mike. You could have gone to party, could have gone to do whatever you were going to do. You didn't. That was the kind of the first day of the rest of your life. Did you job, career? How did you go from struggling kid out there that's just trying to maybe not live and figure that out to I've got to do something to make a living? And
I was 18. So first thing I decided to do was finish high school.
Okay. That's a good start.
I ended up getting a job being a chimney sweep. Because it paid hefty. I think, man, once I got certified, I think I made $12 an hour or something. So like rolling in it. Got
a high school diploma and $12 an hour.
What's left?
The pinnacle.
Got married, found a great woman, got married, and then I got hurt on the job, which led to me taking a job in an office with a friend recruiting doctors. And then I ultimately moved into the recruiting space from there. It was pretty easy stuff, and I was pretty good at it. And I'd always wanted to come back to Colorado. So we made the move back in 2003, and then I was recruiting in high tech and whatnot. That's actually a bit of a lie, especially if my wife listens to this. I was working maybe 10 hours a week. She had a job. I was climbing and fishing. That's what happened. I got a job as a climbing guide. It was a big part of my life. And it was through that job teaching climbing that I met who would end up being my partner in a nonprofit that we started called Phoenix Multisport. It's now called the Phoenix. And it's in every state in the country. It is alternative activities for people in recovery. We provided everything, access to the gyms, all of the gear that you needed. We did triathlon was big parts. We supplied the bikes, we supplied everything. And the idea was just to get people out and exercising, working out together. And that's how I eventually made my way into this field.
So help me that transition, getting people into the gyms, getting them out and doing things something clicked in your brain. There's more to this. It's not just getting out. We need to add another level.
So it turned out this guy whose name was Scott Strode, who I worked with, he had been sober the same amount of time I had. We liked to climb the exact same things. He was a much stronger ice climber than I was, and I was a bit of a stronger rock climber than he was. So we could climb all the mountains we wanted to together. We paired up really well. And it was on a climb one day, an ice climb, where he said, hey, what if we did this and got other people doing it? And we came to find out there's all sorts of like science and stuff behind this and things that are written on. We just thought it'd be cool to be climbing with other addicts and riding our bikes with other addicts, you know? So I was 10 years sober at that point.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
And it was great. Scott's gone on to grow it into something absolutely remarkable.
Wow. So at which point, we'll get to doing the climbing and the biking, what was the first step in that next advance of the career in the company?
I had a massive climbing accident, August 23rd of 2007. And by every single right, should have died. Made national news. It was a fun thing. Readers can see as much as they want. But I was on the east face of Long's Peak on the Diamond. And I fell 800 feet, and I didn't die.
Wow, 800 feet.
Made the cover of Men's Journal. Longest climbing accident on record, not dead. And it gave me a really, really
How
huge...
old were you?
26.
What year was that?
2007.
Wow.
That's when I knew I was going to leave the corporate gig, start the nonprofit. with Scott. And then 3 years into that, I don't know why I'm going to say this because I've never said it publicly before, but I guess they're old enough now, so it doesn't matter. 3 years into that, there was a death in our family, and my wife and I inherited 3 young kids, all of whom were facing some pretty severe issues. You know about adoption. Yeah. And that led me to leaving nonprofit and realizing that I needed to do something that I was going to be able to be with my family a little bit more. Most importantly, provide for therapy bills that equaled 3 mortgage payments. And kind of pursue what that lifelong dream was. So I was at a hospital working inside of a treatment program and did a life plan with an old friend of mine. He's a executive coach. He was a pastor, but was way too cool to stay a pastor. So he left and started doing this executive coaching. All of our
pastor friends out there, we're sorry. Ben said that, not me. Please be a sponsor.
I'm totally not sorry. You can call me anytime. I grew up with one. So we did this, and what we determined at the end of this huge pivotal moment for me was my north. And it was a week's worth of 10-hour days with my wife. And my north was, I've got to change the way that our country perceives both addiction and recovery. And that's what I've been working on doing ever since.
Wow. And you didn't head off to school, university, or did you? I mean, did you? You're kind of a hacker at it, and yet you figured it out.
I barely have a high school diploma.
That's what I was. I remember that. I'm like, he got the high school diploma and $12 an hour. I don't remember the visit to college.
and of all of the ridiculous things, my mother loves to remind me, both of my parents have 2 master's degrees. My dad's got one in child and family therapy and also a master's in divinity. My mother in a master's in art and nursing. As my mom loves to remind me, I'm the only person on either side of the family without even a bachelor's degree. But it's funny with my mom, she'll still remind me. There was 5 years ago, I got invited to New Zealand after my first book came out, and they were considering some major changes to their drug policy. So I actually got to address all of Parliament, and I got 45 minutes to address Parliament. It was incredible. Met everybody who was there, like totally rolled out the red carpet, posing for selfies with these guys. It was awesome. They thought I was a Ben Cort who wrote children's books, not the Ben Cort who wrote this stupid book nobody actually cared. Anyway, at the end of it, my mom's like, she calls me.
Had the wrong Ben.
Had the wrong Ben.
They obviously weren't listening to you speak.
She's like, did you address Parliament in New Zealand last week? I was like, yeah, I did. It was really cool. She goes, I wonder what they would say if they knew they were being talked to someone who barely made it out of high school. And like, oh yeah, thanks, Mom. That's great. Love you too, sweetie.
Rub the nose. Wow, a little guilt there.
Yeah, a little bit of guilt.
So how many faculties are you on for university?
I don't know, 20 or 30.
20 or 30. Just on the faculty. Because
I'm on boards. I'm on a specific board of directors. The International Association of Science and something or other. I'm the only non-physician on the board for cannabis. No, what I always tell people, man, is no, I didn't go to school and I can't, but I can read. Always kind of come back to that. You remember that part in what was the movie that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck did where Matt Damon was really smart?
Good Will Hunting.
All right. You remember when he's
I'm horrible at movie trivia, and I just got one.
You nailed that.
I never get one.
Like, boom.
You said, what's the movie? I'm like, crap.
It's Good Will Hunting.
Stupid now. Good Will Hunting.
You remember when he's like in that bar?
Ben, if you're listening, we'd love a sponsor.
Yes, we'd love a sponsor. Remember when he's in that bar and he says something and everybody's like, wow, how'd you learn all that? And he's like, 50 cents in late fees from the local library. I love to read. I love to learn. And I continue to kind of try and put myself in environments where I can keep doing that.
Wow. Fascinating journey. I'm still stuck back at the university thing. I have a degree and they won't let me even come back and say hello. I mean,
yes, I think that might have more to do with you than the university, Jimmy.
That hurts. Hurts a little bit. Yeah, that's fascinating. So you start putting this thing together and it just starts going. I mean, we're not talking that long ago. You get that life plan put together, the friend takes over the nonprofit, and you just start. What was the first step? The second step? Real bullet point. I mean, where'd you start with a room and a counseling seat, or?
No, I went out and I was consulting. And so I was working inside of different treatment programs, which was super cool because I was seeing so many different things and learning. And I would be at all of the industry events. So I got to sit in on, the newest and greatest everythings and meet these thought leaders. I had written a book at that point that was not a good written book. I love to read, and I'm embarrassed of the marginal nature of my own writing. But some people liked it and thought it was important. So I found myself at these events with other authors, and the thing that really changed it was a contract with the NFL Players Association, where I went in to help them identify better treatment programs for their the former athletes, the former players. And that led then to working directly for NFL and for quite a few clubs inside of NFL, helping them in crisis management when somebody would get into trouble, helping them know what the best companies were or the best treatment programs were. There's 36,000 treatment programs in this country. There's like 20 I'd use. Wow. And then from there, because technically the NFL Players Association is a labor union. From there, I went to another large labor union, sheet metal, rail workers, and transportation, and helped them to identify their centers of excellence and what the process was for admitting and so I got to continue to be inside of and learn all these different things in treatment. And in 2019, took a contract in Steamboat with an old friend, and ultimately ended up getting together with some really dear friends and buying that program. And in buying it, we decided that we were going to build exactly what we knew could be built and what was out there, and we were never going to compromise on our quality in exchange for money.
And so this is it's going to be the largest in the nation, the one that you're just opening.
Well, it'll certainly be the largest in Colorado. No, there's bigger.
For Medicaid.
It is far and away, with no close second, the nicest for Medicaid. I mean, private chef, plated meals, nutrition planning, fully integrated exercise and fitness programming, multiple individual sessions and groups a week. Medicaid treatment is pretty synonymous with giant groups and low quality.
Yeah.
You kind of get a form. I went to a bunch of them.
Yeah.
You get a form, you fill it out. Maybe you watch a movie, you talk at the end of it. We've got a team with our chief clinical officer, who's an old dear friend, chief medical director, who's a dear friend, but most importantly, our CEO, someone I actually got sober with out east, Tom Walker. They're all holding this vision with me, and we know we can do it. You accept smaller margins and harder work, and it's all very doable.
So you could charge $50,000 a month for this. For
absolutely, we could for what we're doing. 70,
and
80.
And everybody make a lot more money.
A lot more money, Jimmy. That's why I got to do so many things. That's why I got so many companies.
Ben needs a sponsor as well.
Yeah,
he needs a sponsor as well.
Maybe the cigar company.
In all this journey, but it's work, and you're living the dream, and you didn't want to sell out for money. The premise of the podcast, the two most important days of a person's life: the day they're born, the day they figure out why. Was there ever a moment that you said, "This is it. This is why I was born. I'm going to do it," or was it more, "I was born for this, and look what I'm doing"? I mean, did you think I'm born for this and go charge the hill, or did you just take steps and go, "I can't believe I'm doing this. This is freaking amazing"?
The name of our company that holds all these others, the parent company, is called NRT, which is 12-step, a wink to the 12-step world, which stands for Next Right Thing. What they tell you in 12-step is you're doing everything a day at a time. And when you screw up, you admit it, and you just try and go and then do the next right thing. I think where I found myself after almost 20 years inside all this business is I used to climb mountains a lot. I don't anymore. It's one
after
step
that
at
fall,
a time.
I think is probably
I climbed my hardest after that fall.
You climbed again. Sorry, I took you off track with a thought of NRT, but let me pick my jaw up. Go ahead.
In fact, the next year for my birthday, my wife gave me an ice axe because I lost mine on the fall, an engraved ice axe that said "Climb again."
Wow.
And I did, yes. So we find ourselves one step at a time reaching the summit. And I think what I have found myself recently is the actualization that one step at a time, attempting to do the next right thing, and certainly not always nailing it, but trying. We found ourselves further than I could have hoped. There were 3 buildings we lost before we found this one, each one of them devastating. Oh, we're never going to make it. We're never. And now we find and are moving into a situation we could never have designed something this good for. The team that I have with me now doing this, I could never have hoped for such good a team. When we brought my friend Tom out to take the program over, he's a CEO, a guy said, okay, you need a right hand. Who are the top 5 people in the country who could do this? And I know most of them because I kind of get around. And I said, top 5. I was like, that list is 1. And his name is Tom Walker. But he was running a very successful business in the DC metro area. And my buddy said, what harm is there in calling him? So I called him, and he was out the next week. They were having their first kid, decided they didn't want the kid growing up in DC.
Oh, wow.
Moved here, and we've been partners the last 3 years.
Wow. Fascinating. I want to back up to the beginning as we wrap up here. Anybody who maybe a younger listener, an older listener that finds themselves in that spiral that you were in, just don't care about tomorrow at all. What's the first step for them? I mean, is it a meeting? I mean, what do you wish someone would have told you when you were 18, 19, 20, or instructed you or directed you or helped you get to?
I'm pretty sure that everybody told me everything I could have ever hoped to hear.
Okay.
A really big part of my life now, I speak a lot, I write. I've got another book coming out next week. I do this kind of thing. But my favorite thing that I do is take the calls from the mom who read something I wrote, or from the person who saw me on TV and wants help. And so I spend a lot of my time with people in that exact moment. And what I've come to decide is that it's maybe a little less of what we say and a little more of how we offer ourselves. We want to be loved. We want to know that we're worth something. Because when we feel that love, for me, it was my buddy Mike. It was that moment with my higher power. It was this feeling that there was more to me than that. Maybe I was worth something that did it. So what I would say to the people who are in a similar spot and thinking like that is, you absolutely are loved and worth it. There is somebody, there's something that loves you very deeply and cares about your future. And I give the same advice I give to parents and family members and loved ones all the time. Show up for that person. Try not to have it be in anger. Try to show up for them out of love and respect and appreciation, because we all want out. That's the secret nobody knows, Jimmy. The person who can drink regularly, who can use regularly, the non-alcoholic, they say, why don't they just stop? We want to.
Yeah.
We just don't think we can.
So if somebody wants, I mean, you obviously have services that you offer. There's other places. What's the resource that people, listening going, Ben, I do want out. What number do I dial? What website do I go to? Because, is it just the AA meeting? Is that the space to start?
Start there because it's free. I tell everybody, like, everything else costs money and time.
Get your ass to an AA meeting.
Get your ass to a meeting. Put $1 in the bucket. It's $1. See if it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, go to another one. If that one sucks, go to a third. Like, I always tell people to start there. We know now that it is more than just us talking. There are mental health issues we got to adjust to and get down into. So I don't know if you can, we can link stuff at the back end of this.
Yeah, we can link it up.
honestly, man, most of the stuff like the national helplines and stuff are all bullshit. They don't get you anywhere. You are more than welcome to put my personal email address on there, because that's something you want to get me to give a talk somewhere, and they pay me money to give talks now. It's crazy. I won't return
for a living, and no one pays me.
Back to the sponsor thing. Back to the sponsor thing.
I'd love to come speak at your event as well.
I will ignore those emails for months on end, but if I get something from somebody that's like, hey, I need help, or my love, like, I'm on the phone right then, because that's the stuff that keeps me sober too. Just put my address. Our admissions team, one of the things that I'm really proud of that we've done too, so you get a lot of calls in admissions. Most of them aren't appropriate for your program. For whatever reason, they don't qualify, they don't anything. Nobody is allowed to get off the phone with our admissions team until they have a plan. Oh. And even if that plan is just, I'm giving you the number of a guy at a meeting in your area, or here's a program that'll work for you. So they're more than welcome to call our admissions line too, because whoever picks that phone up will walk with them through it.
Wow. Ben Cort, fascinating. I knew I'd get that world record fall out of your out of you. I was told, make sure he tells the world record fall, and I was like, I didn't want to ask for it explicitly, but I knew I'd get it.
Yeah, it sucked.
Yeah, I bet. Sheesh, I don't want to think about it. 2 most important days of a man's life, a person's life: the day they're born, the day they figured out why. Ben Cort, you figured it out. You're kicking butt and you're taking names. I figured mine out on the streets of Africa, taking care of widows and orphans. Hey, tune in for the next episode of the Critical Mission podcast. Website is mymissioniscritical.com. Mymissioniscritical.com. Reach out to us there. Share, download, like, and if you'd like to be a sponsor, we'd love to have you. See you next time.